Hey folks, Dr. Mike here. Video number 71 for the channel. And the video topic today is on an interesting idea that I want to sort of throw out to you guys and to the world to get us all thinking about what we could do about the incoming robotics age, specifically with how that melds with mass unemployment and universal basic income. And I have a little proposal here that isn't designed to be taken exactly at face value on specifics, but it's designed to get folks thinking about what the trade-offs look like with the amazing stuff that's happening with the robotics revolution and what kind of ways we can think about to minimize the downsides. So my big proposal here is to impose something like a 10% income tax on the income generated from robots in the future, and take all of that money, give it zero of that money to the government in any capacity to spend as they see fit, nothing to regulatory agencies, nothing to politicians. They already have plenty of money from traditional income taxation, which would continue. But this money would go into a giant pool that monthly would be redistributed to every single American, a UBI. But where, other than the amount of, well, no, I take that back. The government could use its already money to run that system. So 100% of the collected taxes from every single robot worker in the workforce, 10% of their income is taken out, put into a giant bank account. That bank account puts the money into everyone else's bank account every month. And then everyone gets 10% of what all robots make in the United States, as far as generating enough money for what would eventually become a universal basic income. I think this is an interesting way to do things, and I'm curious about what your thoughts are about it. So let me describe some of the background to get you up to speed on kind of where to put this idea in context. So AI is advancing at incredible speeds. To be snarky, because I'm feeling a little bit snarky today, if you want to clown yourself big time, bet against AI and talk about the AI winter or AI slowdown. It's a real good way to every few months look like you just were not paying attention. It's advancing at incredible speeds, and the conservative estimates now of artificial general intelligence are somewhere in the early 2030s, very conservative. And many people are saying it's going to be in the mid to late 2020s, like very soon. AGI is not a term I'm 1,000% in love with. And I'm going to have a video for you guys eventually, almost certainly, about the sort of misnomer that AGI is. AGI is artificial general intelligence. The ostensible definition of AGI is a robot or computer platform that has human-level reasoning, perception, understanding, and output. So you tell it something, it understands like a human would, it reasons like a human would, and its output is like anything you could dependably expect from a human, which means if it has a robot body and the robot body is sufficiently dexterous and energy dense and all that other stuff, that it can kind of start to do pretty much every human job. Like you hire a robot and you go, hey, like here's how to sweep the floor. It goes, okay, like a human would, and it would try and say, okay, a little better, a little more that way. Okay, great. Okay, great. Now sweep the rest of this facility. See you tomorrow. Just like that. That's kind of what AGI allows us to do. I'll talk about how AGI is a little bit of a wacky idea, and that when we get to AGI, we'll have, as soon as we get to that last check mark that makes a robot as good as people are at almost everything or everything, we're already at artificial superintelligence. It's a very, very easy way to get that traction on that problem. But the idea that robots can do an increasing number and then most and then almost all human jobs is the real kernel we want to dig out from there. And that's 100% true. It is essentially inevitable. We have to prepare for it. Now, this has massive upsides. The increasing power of AI is going to multiply our production of value in our economy, of good stuff, goods and services that are awesome and help us, by kind of as much computing as we can run. The number one most constrained resource that we have is intellectual capacity. Humans to do things, to make decisions, to organize data, to take things and transform them from one form to another, the creation of value. If we have loads of artificial intelligence that can do that, well, we can just build more data centers and build more robot bodies, and all of a sudden we just have more workers that are ultra productive. It's going to allow us to answer questions and solve problems that we couldn't even hope to solve a decade ago and didn't even know to ask. There are going to be incredible advances in medicine, in tech, environmental approaches, you name it. It's a massive renaissance that's incoming, and it's already here, and it's just billowing up. And when AGI hits, and AGI and above, artificial superintelligence, it's just going to be a completely crazy, super different world that's amazing in every way. But there is at least one potential downside. And I say potential because it might not work this way, but we got to be ready for if it goes a little south. When you have something on a cloud or in a robot body that can do tons of human jobs, and it's priced at, in the cloud, near zero, and in robot bodies, eventually substantially less than a human is priced at for that same labor, what happens to human jobs? The good news is that there will be plenty of work for organic humans in almost every envisionable scenario. There's professional economists who will remind us of something. We have this big circle called all current jobs. And a lot of people will say, okay, so robots are going to come in and they form a little tiny circle at first of some jobs only robots can do. And then that circle grows and grows and grows as robots gain ability. And eventually it's the whole circle and all humans are unemployed. That's not how that works. The reality is that circle of all human jobs that are currently done sits inside of a almost infinitely sized mega circle. And that mega circle is all of the jobs that could be done to make people better off. I am speaking to you guys right now. And under the table, there is nobody giving me a blowjob. Why not? I want one right now. Scott, what you up to?
Fine.
Scott, get in. But here's the problem. Scott has to run the camera and check the audio feed.
Yeah. Get someone else here. Max, the editor boy.
Max, the editor boy, is a boy. And while boys are cute, that's not my jam. In any case, there are about 1 trillion different things you could want and do want, but you ain't nobody doing them in the current economy. We're talking about being a service person to help you get ready for work in the morning, somebody to iron your clothes, all the household tasks. We're not exploring the moon. We're not exploring Mars. We're not studying the undersea oceans. We're not studying people's data streams to try to learn their personalities to make the AI work better with personalities. There's nobody doing that stuff because we just don't have enough people. So if robots take all human jobs, humans can move into jobs that no one's doing, robot or human, and that's been the case in all of recorded history. It used to be almost all humans did farming, but now almost all farming is done by industrial machines. Are all humans out of work? No. Humans just moved into other jobs. So there are so many jobs only organic humans can do for the time being, and for the foreseeable future, even through robotics, we might not have to worry about it. Fitness. Robots can train you. They can't intuitively understand how it feels to be trained. And so they've never gone through it themselves. So you can have a robot personal trainer in the future for sure. But like at some point, you kind of want to loop in a human probably, because a human's going to be able to tell you like, yeah, the real world don't do that. Like I know the robots run the whole internet, but there's something missing from your own perception. There's another one of, people who, are working on childcare. Robots will be involved in childcare, but probably not like the only thing watching the kid as a robot at first. Sometimes people need human connection. They want to talk to humans. Psychotherapy. Robots can administer excellent psychotherapy. ChatGPT already does a great job. But there's something about talking to a human that's actually experienced things that's qualitatively different. Fashion influencing. If you want to be an influencer who tries on different makeups and different fashions, you have to be a human because you're selling to other humans. And in almost every other way of advertising products for mass consumption, even if you have a corporation run entirely by robots, but they make clothes for humans, they're going to need humans to come in and try the clothes on and tell other people about them. That's a lot of jobs that only humans can do, because if your consumer is a human and you need someone to say, hey, this works for me as a human, and I've tested it as a human, I've vetted as a human, I'm improving it as a human tester all the time, and I'm telling you about what's new and cool as a human. Here's another one, taste testing. If you have entire fields of machines designing new recipes and farming them out to the public to also robots that make them for you at home, that's awesome and it's inevitable. But at some point you need a human in the loop because you probably don't want to push a recipe out to customers without having tried it on human testers first. And I don't mean like they're going to poison you. They're going to know what's poisoning you and not really, really simply. But they're going to want to feed the robot food to some humans first. And humans go, this is really good. little too much salt, and I think you got it. Shit like that. And then those robots are going to be cooking influencers, and they're going to go out in the world and say, hey guys, all these recipes are awesome. I tried them. They're amazing. Only humans can do that job because the target market is human. And until robots have full sim humans, at which point we can all just live in the cloud and all these problems don't matter, we're going to have humans do lots of work. And so most of the jobs are just going to push humans into doing probably just better jobs. So that's definitely the thing. And there's going to be lots of organic work. However, there could be times and places because humans take a little while to retrain and to start doing new jobs, and machines incrementally are taking less and less time to train at all and can do new work just super rapidly, that the influx of robots into commerce and into industry could be amazing and will, but it'll be so fast that you'll have temporary times of humans just finding a lot of transitional time between employment. And that's going to be a thing. So let's talk about potentially addressing that problem. And before we address that problem of human unemployment and what to do and how to get those people taken care of so they can go on to their next career that they find passion in, that's, human career, let's talk about what the robotics industry is likely to look like once it goes commercial and really begins to scale. If we get universally capable humanoid robots, and soon we will, they're already in testing, Figure 02, and then we've got, I think the version 3 of Elon's robot is doing all kinds of cool stuff. So pessimistically, by the early 2030s, robot workforce is going to be multiplying all the time, probably sooner than that. The economics of this get wacky really quick. And I think I've mentioned this a little bit in other videos, but it is an insanely important thing that people can really benefit from realizing. Because once you really inculcate what this means, it's like a giant oh shit moment. Let's have it together. Here's how the economics get really wacky. If the average robot costs $1,000 a month to combination build and maintain, like you lease a car for $1,000 a month that covers the cost of making the car and the cost of running the car and all that stuff. So if the average robot costs $1,000 to build and maintain at some point, and at some point it will, and then even less, and the average robot is employed somewhere in the economy and generates $2,000 worth of value per month. Okay, so it costs $1,000, generates $2,000. We think about a robot generating $2,000, the robot's only generating $24,000 of revenue per year. That's a very, very low-skilled worker in the United States. I'm setting this example especially very, very gently. We'll use a more realistic early to mid 2030s example later, kind of where this is going, but where it starts to scale is the robot, it costs $1,000 and it makes $2,000. So every robot that is built roughly can generate a net profit, net revenue of $12,000 per year for its builder. Dope. But since robots will be employed kind of increasingly everywhere, it's very likely that major robotics companies won't just keep all of that money for themselves, but they're probably going to profit share with private individuals and other companies and the robots. Because companies that make robots like Tesla, they're probably not interested, and it's not in their bandwidth and way not the best return on their investment to make it so the robots are the only ones getting paid and only reporting to Tesla. They don't even know what the fuck the robots are supposed to be doing out in the world. They're just going to be artificially generally intelligent and ready to go and ready to be taught whatever they need to. But the specific skills that you teach them, like you hire robots at a shipyard, they don't know how to do ship work. You got to teach them that shit. And if you're going to teach them that stuff, Tesla better not take all that money. And Tesla understands that. Just like not all of the money goes to the YouTube corporation when we put up ad revenue and stuff, a bunch of it goes to creators. In a very similar way, it's likely that robotics companies in the future will profit share with private individuals and other companies. So just as an example, just for thought experiment, they might take in, let's say the robot gains them $12,000 of net money per year. Tesla might take $6,000 of that to themselves. Amazing. Huge 50% profit margin. That's pretty dope. And then leave 50% for whoever it is that purchased the robot and is employing it. So that way your robot nets you 60 or 6K every year that you use it. Raw 6K, all expenses covered, by the way. And that Tesla or whatever robot company runs the robotic side uses that 50% to make repairs and updates to the robots and make them better and better and better over time. And obviously some of that money just goes back to the investors and makes everyone rich. And the rest of the 50%, like I just said, goes to whoever pays the monthly fee. And hey, that's how the robot economy works. It works very similarly with cell phones or YouTube channels or anything like that. Like the Apple Corporation actually just sells the cell phones to like AT&T or whatever, and or just sells them directly to you for a certain sum amount of money. And then you pay AT&T or whatever company you have for a contract. It's, $100 a month, $50 a month for all the data streaming. And then like however you use your cell phone to make you money, like in every way that they're used for work, like Apple's not coming for that money. AT&T doesn't give a shit. They got their shit and they just want to empower you to go make money and go have fun with your cell phone. And they don't really care what happens. That is highly likely to happen with robotics companies because it's the easiest, most nonsense model to scale robotics out. Like, we don't care what you do with a robot. Don't do anything unethical. It actually won't do anything unethical because it's super intelligent, so it knows what ethics are. But go do what you do, give us some money back, and then you can have the rest of the money. That is explosive and inevitable, essentially. What this does, and an amazing thing it does, is it creates an incredible incentive for people all over the world to lease and deploy robots to their wants and needs, and everyone wins, like cell phones or YouTube. Because a lot of people won't even really work anymore. Their job will just be managing a fleet of robots. And if robots are artificially generally intelligent, you can actually put a robot manager in charge of that fleet instead. And then all you do is like approve major decisions and collect the money. 100%. It's kind of what like factory owners do now, right? And as soon as these robots are ROI positive for the individuals using them and for the corporations that build them and maintain them, they will begin to exponentially enter the workforce. Why? Because they are net productive. They are free money generators. If a robot, here's the thing, the robot doesn't need the money. Robots are perfectly, quote unquote, happy to continue to do their job. Also, the intelligence they have never dies. It's just from the cloud to the robot brain, and every night when it sleeps, it uploads back to the cloud. The robot doesn't even care if it has to sacrifice its body for the job. And it can be programmed to have an absolutely great time doing exactly whatever the hell you want it to do. Ultimate flexibility. For that reason, the robot just gets a bunch of money and goes, I don't need this for anything. Here's some for the company. Here's some for you. That ability to get work done, the robot is now this work node. It's this node in a complex dynamic game theoretic system that just simply produces value. And we're going to be eating off that. And that's just the beginning, because robots will almost inevitably begin to produce more and more output per unit time and cost less and less to make an upgrade. This has been the case for pretty much every single invention that has matured in the third industrial, the electronics revolution. And it is highly likely, because robots will be a fourth industrial revolution product, to get even more extreme. The AI revolution that's currently in its infancy is the fourth industrial. That's where robots are going to really bloom. And so like think about how, TVs have done, computers have done, cell phones have done, cars have done. These are things that just continue price performance wise relative to people's incomes to get cheaper over time, but just better in every conceivable way. You compare a Tesla car today to something made in 1979, like a GM, whatever the hell in 1979, you're going to be like, is this just like a pollution machine that also makes noise for fun? I don't get it. And it takes you places, but it's loud. It's not very safe. And the Tesla ratio to current incomes is just cheaper than the cars were back then. And cars actually have tons of regulatory burden. Hopefully it doesn't enter robotics as much, but things like TVs, cell phones, multiples in price performance. And we have every reason to believe on theory and in practice and on the economics of it that the same thing will happen to robots. So at some point in the not too distant future, maybe 10 years away, maybe less, maybe a little more, you might have 5 robots per every human. Of all kinds. And these robots might cost only $500 a month to operate and build plus operate, and might be producing an average monthly value of $10,000 per month. Do you think that's unrealistic? Okay, let's step back a second. Today, ChatGPT 4.0 can already do many intellectual tasks orders of magnitude better, like research and recommendations and booking trips. Can already do these things better than any human being ever at a scale unimaginable to us. And in a lot of different intellectual ways, it's coming up real close to the average person or even above. Think about that intellect multiplied by 10 inside of a robot. How many people today in the United States and much of the world can earn over $120,000 a year from their jobs, which is to say they produce at least that much because their work pays them back that much? A ton. Like all doctors, pretty much all lawyers, almost all engineers, they're all making over 120K a month. Is it really so difficult to believe that a robotic system that's 10 times more intelligent than all of those people are today, even that one that is 1.2 times more intelligent than those people, can't make the same amount of value? So my contention is a robot eventually in the 2030s is going to be able to produce more than $10,000 per month in value. I just don't think that's really difficult to envision. Like if I said $1 million per month, you'd be like, oh, that's crazy. Like the RP Corporation produces more than that per month. And like, we don't have anyone at the company that's 10 times smarter than the average human. So already that's kind of believable, but fuck that nonsense. Just $10,000 a month. What I'm trying to say is that's very reasonable. Now, that means that each robot might net something like $100,000 per year, and to more and more and more after that as it gets better. And remember, we're in a world now where maybe the average person has a few robots, maybe 5. How is this going to affect a lot of people's current jobs? So if you can hire a robot to do the same job a human used to do, but at a way smaller cost, $500 a month, holy crap. But as a huge benefit to you, you're likely going to do it. For sure. Now, because the number of hypothetical jobs, as I described earlier, is always larger than the size of the human workforce, as we pour more robots in, robots will begin to do lots and lots of jobs that humans never did, but also lots and lots of jobs that humans do. And for some people, that's going to lead to unemployment transitions, and they'll be a reality, perhaps for very many people, possibly for very few. It would be the first time that mass unemployment ever occurred, because in all of the 3 industrial revolutions we've had so far, including taking the American workforce from 98% of farming to 2% of farming, and there was never mass unemployment during that time, it would be the first time there was mass unemployment. It's believable because technology used to come in very slowly. Every several decades, there would be major innovations, then every several years. Now, if you guys follow AI news, it's every several weeks. And so in the future, it's going to be even more intense and more insane. So the innovation is going to be completely crazy, which means money will be fucking falling out of the sky. The real thing I'm talking to you about today is how do we collect that money in a way that makes sure that some of the people, maybe many of the people who could experience a transitional phase where they don't have jobs, robot took my derb. How do we make sure that that is smoothed over? Because it's a big deal. We don't want people unemployed. That's fucked up, right? We have all this money. We got to do something with it. So what can we do about managing this unemployment transition? There are many ideas that we could do, and I'm going to tell you a few of them, which I think are categorically fucking terrible. But people talk about them openly, and it's not great. Recently, we had like the longshoreman people, the dock worker people protest, and one of their proposals was a total ban on automation, which is them just trying to rob you and me of our hard-earned money because they're doing a racket at the fucking ports. There's no other way to put that. We can make it, here's some options. We can make it illegal for robots to be constructed and sold. That misses out on potentially multiplying our total wealth as a society by 10 over the next 20 years. By 10. There will be no more poor people left. The average person will be a millionaire. Stop. This is not, can you guys imagine when people were using computers for data analysis and people who used to use it by hand would have been like, in 1975, no more computers are to be built. No, you're not allowed to use computers at work. Well, fuck would we be today? You wouldn't be watching this, would you? Your cell phone's a computer. So is your TV. Like a non-starter. Non-starters, we just throw that one away. Another thing we can do is make robots have to charge wages that are higher than humans so that humans can still undercut robots and still be employed. That would radically reduce innovation and keep goods and services way higher. How do you think you're going to get super cheap goods and services in a robot economy? Because the robots work for fucking pennies and produce a shitload of value. You get to be the benefactor of that. If we're not allowed to hire a robot unless we pay the robot, way more money and thus we hire humans for less, we just got a bunch of expensive robots. They don't really help us all that much. Yeah, sure, for some of the expensive jobs, they're good, but it's really hampering how much we feel it and how much products and services cost to us regular humans. So again, another total non-starter. Anyone promulgating this, very charitably, I mean this with all love and respect, is economically underinformed at best, illiterate at worst. We can also make it so that robots are off limits to doing certain human jobs, to protect those human jobs. Now, there's some liability stuff in which that might make sense, like babysitting. Maybe you want to be look, you have to have a human around the baby because OpenAI says that. OpenAI with their figure robot integration, let's say in the 2030s, you can have a robot that absolutely can tend to a human child better than most humans can. But OpenAI says they will not allow your robot to tend to your children under the age of 2 by themselves, straight up for legal liability reasons. Because if the child has SIDS or whatever, sudden infant death syndrome or whatever, and your kid just croaks, shit, fellas, all over respect, shit just happens. Sometimes a 2-year-old will turn over weird and it's really tragic shit, but babies die sometimes. And if OpenAI's robot is tending to the baby and the baby dies for no fault of the robot tried to do everything it could to save it, it couldn't do it, then OpenAI is getting sued for an infinity amount of money. And they might just say we're not caring for extremely elderly people and we're not caring for children. You got teens, we'll babysit the teens. Up to age 70, we'll do caretaking duties for humans. But in hospital settings where people are near death, we have to have human supervision around. The robot can be around to help, but you got to have a human. That is a different case. That's totally understandable. But I'm talking about no robots are allowed to do carpentry because we want to protect human carpentry jobs. The one thing I'll say is if you go back to video number 59 in our series, this wildly misunderstands the purpose of work. The purpose of a carpenter is to deliver finished wood products to humans that need them. It is not to have a carpentry job. It's very random that you would even make things out of wood. There's plenty of other shit to make things from. So the real reason you have a job is because humans want what you have. And if they can get it somewhere else, you're not entitled to a job at all. It's like your girlfriend wants to break up with you and you're like, I'm sorry, I'm entitled to having a girlfriend. It's like, what? No, you're not. Your girlfriend isn't entitled to having you as a boyfriend either. But because she wants you in her life, that's why you're in her life. As soon as she's like, I'm good, pimp, I'm going with someone else, it is your 100% moral responsibility to be like, all right, what else I got? So the whole saving jobs for humans thing is total nonsense because you don't have a job to have a job. No. You have a job because people demand and need your goods and services and you're kind enough to produce them. But as soon as they go, I'm actually going something else, I might have a robot do this for me, you're not entitled to shit. Legit. And all the longshoremen people, that is exactly what's happening there as well. And we could take this argument really absurdly. We say, okay, we want human carpenters, right? Why don't we bring back human chimney sweeps? Get a 4-year-old going up and down that chimney. It's a job. We don't want to steal chimney sweep jobs from people like having a fucking roto-rooter robot do it or a guy stick a fucking long pipe up there. No, a human needs to go in there. And that's insane. There's tons of jobs that humans could just be doing better jobs that we don't need them to do anymore. And of course, this kind of limitation would reduce total wealth like crazy. Because right now, I've tried to get a welder to come to my gym to do some welding for me to modify some equipment custom. And welders cost $100 an hour. And they just straight up, as far as I can tell, don't exist. Because I've tried to book a few and they're like, yeah, I'll see you. And they just don't show up. Why? Because they have so much work that they're buried in the shit. They could just do only as much work as they want. They make infinite amounts of money doing it. And they just don't give a fuck. And they just don't show up. And listen, this is not a slight against welders. You guys are the fucking awesome pimps that you critical to the economy. But if we got some robots to help with welding, then some of us who need welding would get access to welders and not have to wait in an infinite line that actually never resolves itself. It's like this in almost every single industry. If we need the help, robots can help. And if you say only humans can do it, well, you better get to breeding real fast because I need more welders, goddammit. I need them now. It'll reduce total wealth like crazy. It's a real bad idea. It's backwards with respect to modern economics, and it's just preventing us from living all better. So there's another option, of course, which is to establish a universal basic income off of just taxing other people, some of whom will use robots, some won't. And that if people lose work, they can work on their own terms without having to worry about finances for a while. That's dope. My proposal is a direct UBI leveraged specifically to robotics. Because if I'm a human person and I work with my hands, I don't really interact with robots, and now I have to pay money for other humans that lost their job because of robots, like, I love being a part of a society where we get to help each other, but also it's like a little lame for that person to ask me to pay for them because it wasn't my fault they lost the job. Whose fault was it? Sort of. Fault is a real weird term to use here. Well, it's the robots, right? The robot took my job, and because the robot took your job, maybe we can work that in somewhere. Remember, we have this really interesting thing here. Robots are going to take some jobs, right? But the amount of wealth they're going to produce is fantastical. So here's my proposal, just a proposal. I could be very wrong about this. Impose something like a 10% tax on all revenue coming from robotics platforms. If a robot is operating, 45% of the income goes to Tesla, as an example. 45% of the income goes to the person running the robot and collecting the money for whatever job they have it doing, flipping burgers or mowing lawns or whatever. And then 10% of that robot's produce goes to the government. So if a robot makes like $100K a year in residual value, then the government gets $10K of that per robot. Remember, there's going to be a world with lots and lots of robots. And if there aren't lots of robots, well, then it's just not really a big problem that people are being displaced, because not a lot of people get displaced by 100 or 1,000 robots. But if it's millions of robots, yeah, we're starting to displace some serious people from the economy, but also we're starting to make some serious money. And you take money from that tax every year and distribute it evenly into every citizen's bespoke bank account for that style of transaction. So then we have a universal basic income, and folks don't need to worry about the government misallocating it, because that money is not for general taxation. It is not for the government to take and dispense as it sees fit. It is exclusively to put into a big pool. The pool divides evenly by the population of the United States, and all of America's people get the same amount of money. Totally just system, zero fraying of any kind. So, in other words, a direct to people money with no overhead. As soon as you introduce filters and give some more money to some people, you get economically differentially interested classes. If you demonstrate, well, robots took my job, so I need more of this money, all of a sudden you're getting like weird welfare, and then you're not really encouraged to go look for work and all that other stuff. So it's much better to just spread it all around. I could be wrong about that. There could be other nuanced ways of doing it. So what are the downsides of doing this? Some people, as they do now with their own money, might spend the money poorly and still need social support like housing and food and medical care. Fact, doesn't change from now till later. Some people will just use that robot money to live off of and do nothing else but chill, which is kind of lame. But people do that already. And I'll have more to say about this later. But it's a serious downside, serious problem. The biggest probably downside of this is that 10% tax will discourage companies making robots a little bit from investing in robots, because you don't get as much return out of it. But I suspect the robotics boom will be so insane that 10% is actually not going to be a huge measurable disincentive. It's absolutely going to incentivize keeping more tasks on the cloud, because taxing AI on the cloud is possible, but it's very weird as to how you would even do that. But it's probably good to have a lot of stuff on the cloud and at even no tax rate whatsoever, because remember, cloud computing can't take most humans' jobs, because the human has the mouth and the voice and the hands, and that's how they do their job. Cloud computing is already doing most of the work in the digital space, and humans doing less and less, but doesn't really like put people out of work necessarily. Like customer service folks might be put out of work with cloud computing because you just need a phone and all that stuff. But really this issue is a robotics specific issue, because robots with their hands and their faces and their ability to move around, they can potentially get after almost all human jobs. Whereas data center cloud computing, there's a bunch of jobs that like you need someone to flip the burger, and the data center can't do that. So maybe they'll invest more data centers, a little bit less in robotics, but still the upside is so enormous. There's a reason it's 10%, because I could have said 90% tax on robots. Well, that would have curbed investment like crazy. 50% would have hurt it a ton. 30% would have hurt it a ton. But 10% is a very small number. So I'm totally amenable to discussing 25%, totally amenable to discussing 3%. But I think somewhere in that range passes the vibe check of still massively incentivizes the economies of scale that would have robot companies investing into this, massively incentivizes people still buying a robot, because it's like, hey, you can buy a robot, it could do work for you, but the government keeps almost all the money. You're like, fuck, do I need that for? Fuck that. I think there's a world in which that low tax rate is really, really good, but innovation could be higher and faster if we had no tax at all. We could make it much higher, but then the long-term revenue of the robots would be curtailed. But we really want the long-term revenue of these robots to grow as much as possible. Why? Because if that revenue grows, we get upsides. What are the upsides? The more robots outcompete humans in jobs, the more robots are hired. The more robots are hired, the higher everyone's UBI becomes from that pool, because more robots are producing more work and contributing more to that pool. More 10% is just more money. And remember, that's not 10% of a fixed robot workforce that gets antagonistic. It's a workforce that multiplies all the time. Like, we don't have the same number of cars in the US today as we had in 1950. It's like whatever, triple or some shit like that, or maybe way more than that. It's just going to be growing. So more money. This is the real magic to think about. As robots start approaching 10xing human productivity, which is not difficult to think about in something that's 10x more powerful and more intelligent. And if we're having robots approaching 10x human population numbers, everyone already has at least one cell phone, often more than one cell phone. If we can get robotics, which is very possible, to the level of cell phone proliferation, the thing is, you don't really need more than one or a few cell phones. If you're a drug dealer, you need like 3. One cell phone does everything you need. But with robots, like, one robot is doing kitchen chores. I could have another robot tending to the grounds or whatever mansion you fucking live in. Or you can have a robot that you bought that's going to do a job for you and it brings back all the money for you. But like, if you can afford another robot, why not just buy another one to do still more work? There's always more work to be done. And cell phones aren't independent workers, so they can't just go out in the economy, do their own thing, but robots are. So there's this massive incentive, not only to make the robots individually way more powerful in how much value they produce, every incentive, everyone's aligned. The government wants that to happen because they get more tax money. The corporations want that to happen because they get more profit. And you want it to happen because the robot's doing way more stuff for you. It's just everyone's totally aligned on that. And you want as many of these robots as possible, because if you have a robot that's 10x more capable than a human, and there's 10x more of them than humans, we're talking on a 10% tax of hundreds of thousands of dollars per year to every American citizen, just on that 10% tax rate. I'm going to say this with full disclosure of me really meaning what I say. It is the end of material poverty as we know it. If somewhere in the late 2030s, the average person makes $400,000 per year simply to exist, because just on 10% of robot revenue, that's how much robots are producing, every income inequality argument, just completely, like, if I'm making $400,000 per year doing nothing, so is every other American, I just can't get really irate about what Elon Musk is making. I don't give a shit anymore, because we're all rich. It's a totally different world. And this is a real possible world that is, I assess, coming sooner than later. So let's consider the basic economics and do the right thing from the get-go. I'm totally fine with zero robot tax whatsoever, by the way. And just, if you have robots you own, you declare your income tax for the robots, and then the income tax, a part of that goes to the UBI. The only reason I think that's kind of is because income tax just goes generally to government. And I hate that, because they're just going to spend all of it and say we have no money for the UBI. We want robots as much as possible in the workforce, and for humans to be as well off as possible and insured from bad times. So it's a real good idea to get this minimum tax potentially for robots and keep that incentive to get the robots as capable as possible and as many of them as possible. Full bloom. Now, some people who have money to buy robots and employ them will use that, and they'll have even more than the UBI's level of money. But if you think about it, as soon as you have enough money coming in to cover your living expenses and your entertainment, you can, and when the robot just gets better at its job, even if you just have one robot and now it's getting extra money, at some point, the robot's own extra money can afford to buy another robot for you. And then you instantly 2x your revenue stream. So if there's really a world, work with me here, in which you can make an excess profit of $100,000 a year, but each robot costs $1,000 a month, or let's say $10,000 a year to run, what's stopping you from taking, I don't know, easy $50,000 of that 100K and buying yourself 5 more robots? And now in the next cycle, as long as the fucking robot factories also run by robots can produce robots fast enough, at some point you get to this place where every more money you make just affords you more robots that also make you more money. The limit of that equation is all human wants and needs are satisfied. And we get real close at some point. And on that way up, and I think Elon Musk said this in an earlier interview, when we have a 100+ trillion, 200, 500+ trillion economy globally, ideas about poverty and wealth and what money means anymore start to just be like, it's not about how much money you have. It's like what products, goods, and services are even out there to buy. Because if you think about it, if you're a trillionaire, but you live in like a Southeast Asian fishing village in 1880, it doesn't matter. There ain't nothing for you to buy. You can get all the people in the village to do your work or whatever for you. But if you're like, I need Swedish meatballs, we don't have that. There's nowhere to get them from. Sorry, the global economy doesn't work like that. At some point, if you have enough money, it really is a matter of like, well, what can I actually buy? And since the robots are making most of the stuff and making most of the money, guys, I'm telling you, it gets wacky. And one quick thing before you think I'm running off into AI singularity mega world again, and I'm just insane and hyper optimistic. If you describe to someone from 100 years ago or 200 years ago what your life is like today, they'll already think you're insane. Think about people who like personal trainers who also post social media content. Like explain to someone in the 1850s what you do. Look, well, I help people exercise. They're like, what's exercise? Like, right. It's this thing we're kind of probably more or less invent at the turn of the century when there's enough rich people and people working in factories, not with their bodies, but with their minds, that they need more physical movement because that's good for health. And then people help them move. Like, okay, so just ultra rich people shit. Like, yeah. But nowadays everyone trains. It's not just ultra rich people. And so what I do is I help people exercise, but also go on social media to promote my services. And even that makes me money. And they're like, what's social media? And you're like, oh God, how do I even put this to you? And then after you're done describing it, they're like, okay, so you live in a magical paradise world where when you get hungry, you just go to this thing called a grocery store, supermarket. You just get anything you want from the world and it's safe and you can eat it. And within minutes it's ready and you can have a feast every night. You're like, yeah, matter of fact, a lot of us are feasting every night, which is why my job is so important because all of us are getting too fat. And they're like, you're an idiot. There's no way this is possible in just 150 years. We've had thousands of years of just gripping basic survival off the fucking soil. You're telling me in just really 50 years and definitely 150, all of our poorest people are going to be fat? Like, someone's going to be like, you're nuts. Same shit about this, but it's coming and it is inevitable. Last thing, what about the handouts laziness factor? Because you're going to say, look, people are getting money for not doing any work. I got 2 things to say about that. Thing 1 is very politically incorrect. Here we go. Time to get canceled. There is robust research. It is not, to my mind, completely convincing, but very interesting, that shows that when people get lazy from handouts, it's actually a statistical effect. People don't actually get lazy from handouts. When you give 50 people handouts, the ones that were lazy to begin with and only worked begrudgingly and poorly, I might add, or weren't working at all because they're lazy as a character trait, they get the money and they don't do shit with it because they weren't going to do with it anyway. They don't work anymore. They just take the money, eat food, have entertainment, whatever they want. The other people in there that on pretty much pure genetics or some combination of genetics and culture, they're the ones that actually were working hard and scrimping and saving and building for the future. And now when you give them free money, they just take that free money and like, they just do the same thing with all of it that they've always been doing, which is investing and saving and still working because they just need to work. Some people just need to work. A lot of people just work. That's what they do. And if you tell them you don't have to work anymore, they go to work anyway. It seems to be that there are deep cultural traits and potentially very deep genetic traits that within any given population have a normally distributed curve of some people just going to work anyway, no matter what you give them. Some people just don't want to work much and they just won't work under any circumstances unless their survival depends on it. And they just hate it anyway. Once you give people money, it's not clear that the people who used to be hardworking just abandon work altogether. Some of them might work less. Some of them might work in different jobs. But most of the people that are productive anyway, and most of the people that are barely productive at all, we're just kind of not really going to be productive to begin with because of who they are. It's super fucked, but the research supports at least some of this. Do I think that it's the whole story? No. Do I think that over even acute terms that you can incentivize people to be lazier than not by simply giving them stuff? Yes. But I don't think it's 100% of the equation. I think it might be more like 50-50 and even more skewed than that, which is to say that I think a lot of what makes people go to work is just because they're the kind of people that work. And if whether you give them stuff or not makes a difference, not a huge difference. And I think a lot of people who just don't like working all that much, they'll work if they have to. But as soon as they don't, they're going to quit anyway. There's nothing to do about it. So I don't think the UBI is going to make everyone a slob. I think that's highly unlikely. I think ultra-industrious people just continue to be ultra-industrious. And non-industrious people will usually just do really poorly unless you give them money and help them out. Teach a person to fish. I love all that. So this is part 2 now. That was part 1. So I don't think it's as big of a problem. I don't think it's going to disincentivize everyone for work. In a certain sense, it's also like, who cares? Because the robots do all the work now. But that's not true. They're not going to do all the work. There's still money to be made doing human stuff. Number 2, we really need to consider social and psychological factors to find that allow people to have gainful employment that's meaningful to them. Because there's also a large pool of data that shows that when people are gainfully, meaningfully employed at making a difference, it makes them happier and secure psychologically and makes their life complete in a way that no amount of leisure or entertainment could ever do. And that's probably a thing. It might not be a thing for everyone. Some people are totally fine just hanging out, but many, maybe most people are not. And so we do have to think about how we can make sure to have people have a UBI, universal basic income, that makes sure that they're never wanting for the basics. But at the same time, at least allow them the opportunities or give them the proper incentives to continue to do productive work, not because we need them to. Robots got us covered. We all have all the money we need, but because humans are better off doing productive work. That is a whole line of reasoning that can be for another video. I think it's a big deal and we should think about all of this. But we're going to be able to afford UBI very soon because the AI boom and the robotics boom is going to take the UBI, universal basic income, from today relatively unaffordable, it would bankrupt the economy, into like, oh yeah, we can easily afford this, no problem. The biggest part is this. We have to manage this transition to a robotics economy in a way that keeps the growth coming and not in a protecting way to limit the robot economy and to get the big UBI and to limit technological expansion and just grab our little resources and stay. Because the Soviet Union tried that, China tried that, North Korea tried that, East Germany tried that. It does not work very well. We want a mega innovative economy where the profit incentive is massive, but we can siphon a little bit off of that to make sure people are at least not having a terrible time getting displaced from employment and not finding any more meaning in their lives. Speaking of meaning in lives, I use Sam Harris's Waking Up app to take a step back from the world every now and again in my regular meditation practice and to try to think more clearly about things. It's very difficult to do in your actual brain. My brain's a complete psychotic, insane place where random, insane thoughts bubble up constantly. And my mindfulness practice allows me to see this bubbling, crazy ocean and to watch it long enough without getting super personally affected by it until the water's calm and I can make sense of things. You might want to try a meditation practice in your life. If you've been thinking about it, then the Waking Up app is a really good thing to try. We are sponsored by them now. Yay, a sponsor. And the link is in the description to click through. I think I get some money at some point, or Scott the Video Guy really gets all the fucking money. Son of a bitch. And Mr. Sam Harris gets some money, but you get a huge amount off on the app. If you want to give it a try, that's super dope. Give that some thought. And yeah, let me know in the comments what you think about this stuff and future videos related to this. I can always try to make a video about the meaning of work in people's lives and why it's good to have a productive outlet and not just entertain yourself all the time. get all that covered. Let me know what videos you guys want to see, and we'll be back next time for more videos. Peace, homies.